Okay, I would like to introduce Mark Sims to you. I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with Austin attorney and mediator Mark Sims on the Texas Association of Mediators board for the past 4 years. Mark is the immediate past president of TAM and was the co-chair of the 2020 TAM conference that was in Lakeway. He is a graduate of the University of Texas School of Law and has finance and marketing degrees from the Combs School of Business at UT. Mark is a TMCA credentialed distinguished mediator who has facilitated more than 4,000 mediations, which is amazing to me. Congratulations, Matt. He has given numerous lectures on family law topics, mediation issues, and collaborative law at training seminars for attorneys, at other public events, and in the local media. He's also spoken at a number of mediation training seminars. I have learned a lot from Mark in the relatively short amount of time I've known him. His people skills are absolutely amazing. He had the difficult job of leading TAM through 2 years of the pandemic at a time when everyone felt frightened and isolated. He brought peace and camaraderie to our board. Through his strong yet gentle leadership, we actually looked forward to Zoom board meetings and became a closely knit, productive force. Today, Mark is going to talk with us about building a successful mediation practice. I give you my friend, Mark Sims.
Oh my gosh, Linda. Thank you. I have to say, I think I've gotten more from you out of this relationship than you've gotten out of me, by the way. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and welcome everybody. It's a real thrill to be speaking to the Austin Association of Mediators again, and welcome everybody. I'm gonna just preface by, it's always tricky to have this topic because, as I guess Clay mentioned, there's a lot of students here. There's people who've been mediating longer than I have. There's just a wide breadth, as in any mediation group, of levels of experience and levels of expertise and that kind of thing. And so in putting this together, I really did try my best to try to be inclusive in terms of having a little bit to offer all of you. But I want to apologize ahead of time if I'm saying stuff, oh my gosh, everybody knows that, or oh my gosh, that's way further down the road than where I'm at. I apologize, but my hope is that by covering a lot of different topics, everybody can leave with something out of this talk. I guess to start with, I'm gonna start my share screen, if that's all right. Hopefully this will work. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Does everybody see that? Okay. All right. Well, like I said, I've been a full-time mediator for 20 years, and maybe what makes me unique, maybe what doesn't make me so unique, is that I'm a one-person operation. I don't have a staff. I don't have people. I do mediate pretty much daily, and I coordinate scheduling and confirmations and the Zoom links and drafting and accounting and just everything, and including that part of the business that involves being a mediator. And it really kind of evolved out of necessity, candidly. I've never really had a staff, and I kind of like it to be that way, where it's just me kind of coordinating it. But in the years that I kind of pieced that together, little by little, I did have to, rely on technology quite a bit. And I'll talk a little bit about that, probably just enough to be dangerous. But I do want to try to give everybody some guidance about, a little bit about my journey and kind of how that came about. I guess the main thing is just sometimes it seems daunting that, oh my gosh, I'm getting into this new area, or I've been a mediator for a while in one capacity, but I want to try to make it more of a business type thing. And the reality is, don't be nervous about doing that. You know, it's a journey like anything. You will hit speed bumps, you will make mistakes, but if you just take it a step at a time, you're going to be in good shape. And just do it. You know, a lot of people with lots of challenges in life spend so much time preparing and just getting ready and positioning themselves, and they're never quite ready. You know, you're never going to be quite ready. So if your thought is I'm not mediating, but I want to start. You know, if you're saying I'm not mediating, I'm not charging for my mediations, but I want to get to that point, you know, transition and kind of make it your agenda to do that. As far as my own journey, I really did, you know, I was a family lawyer for a number of years, and I just got disenfranchised with family law. Maybe the better way of saying it is I got disenfranchised with court, and I really did enjoy being a participant in mediation. So, you know, other people that were sort of in my crew, my class, so to speak, were starting to get board certified. And I thought, you know, do I really want to do this? Just have higher level, you know, of this, you know, conflict and I just don't know that I was up for it. The other thing is that I remember when I was in school taking the bar exam and thinking I'll never have to take another test again. And when it came time to get board certified, you know, it involves taking another test again. And I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do it, but I need to do something. So I will get my mediation training. And of course, for anybody in this area, most of you are doing that or have done it, is taking your mediation training. So that's really the first thing to get going. The other thing that I would recommend, especially if you're focused or thinking about a certain area, get training, get specialization in that area. For me, it was family law. Obviously, I took the 24-hour training for parent-child mediations, but you know, there's a lot of different areas where mediators are needed and useful and helpful, and there's a demand for mediators, not just family law. Of course, that's my area of expertise, so you'll be hearing that trend, but there's a lot of ways to get information and learn about these other, you know, areas of law. The other thing, and maybe this is more for the law students that are, let's try that again, the mediation trainees that are there, the people who are in the 40-hour basic mediation training. If there's one piece of advice I could tell you to become a better mediator, is to buy this book, Getting to Yes. Most of the people that are in this meeting already own it, have probably read it more than once, but it really is sort of the guiding post to being a good mediator, in my opinion. The funny thing about Getting to Yes, it's not really a mediation book. It's really a negotiation book. But, you know, the principles that are in that book really are helpful, really do apply in almost every mediation you're going to be involved in. And really the principles in that book really sort of define what give you value as a mediator, more so than just being a messenger person going back and forth between rooms, which anybody can do. You know, learning and refining your skill with the main concepts in that book really will make you a good mediator. And candidly, most of you might, you know, or probably are already at that point. But for new mediators, run, don't walk to your bookstore and get this. I think I own like 4 copies of it just over the years. They're everywhere. Half price, we'll have it. Get a copy of this book and look at it frequently. All right, so now that you got your mediation training and you have Getting to Yes figured out, the next thing you need to do is, you know, start. And in mediation, there's really a couple of components. One is, you know, being the mediator part, but 2 is having an understanding about the types of conflicts, the type of situations, the type of cases that you're going to be involved with. And one thing that I would encourage you to do once you've sort of figured that out, well, even in figuring out, there is some wisdom in kind of start where you know. You know, if you have a level of expertise in a certain area, a lot of people transition into mediation because they've done something else prior to mediation. Even if you haven't done something else prior to mediation, or you're not really a well-versed in any specific area, figure out what area you want to be involved in and get to know it and learn that area of where you're going to be practicing, especially the lingo. A lot of times in mediation, as all of you know, there's sort of specialized lingo in any specific area. If you're doing post office mediations, if you're doing family law, if you're doing probate law, if you're doing workplace mediations, whatever is out there, a lot of times, there's lingo in workplace. If they talk about the EEOC and just all the detailed stuff out there, it's just helpful that you're well versed and you know that. So it really will increase your comfort level just having a solid background about that area, and about that the not just acronyms and not just the lingo, but just the field in general. And honestly, you know my philosophy: jump in with both feet once you start mediating cases, and you hear a term in a mediation that you're unfamiliar with, and you have a brief panic, and then you get past that, write down that term and learn it for next time. Hey, I need to familiarize myself. I'm hearing this phrase, this reference over and over. I need to start educating myself so I can talk intelligently about whatever that area is. Of course, if you do have a foundation like I did with family law, Mark Twain said, write what you know. For me, starting out, mediate what you know. The other thing, I don't need to know that I need to worry about this group about learning Zoom, since you probably all know Zoom. But the other area to get involved in learning sort of the lingo and learning how things go is go to court. And we really have a unique opportunity these days because there's Zoom court, right? It's easy to go to court. And I wish I'd put the link to the website in here, but there's a link to pretty much any court proceeding in the state of Texas broken down by county. And it's really easy to spend a couple hours just perusing that, finding a hearing, and just being in the peanut gallery, but while you're sitting at home in your pajamas. You don't have to be there, and it's kind of, oh, this is boring, this is my area. It's real easy to jump around, and you never know, sometimes court's fun. Most of you have probably seen this, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. It's a very quick clip from an actual court hearing where an attorney had a little bit of difficulty with Zoom. Judge Bowers trying to help this attorney through him struggling with Zoom and getting the cat feature off. I got to hand it to Jerry Phillips and to Judge Bauer, because they kept their cool and kept their composure way better than I ever thought. And by the way, find this video. If you're ever having a bad day or a hard time, play it. I assure you your day will get better, because it's just a riot. And God bless those attorneys and the attorneys that happened to for, keeping their professionalism as best as they could. Back to, familiarizing yourself with the issues and going to court. You learn a lot just by sitting in the peanut gallery, hearing the issues, hearing, these types of cases. The other thing is shadowing other mediators. No better way to kind of get a sense for what the issues are by being a fly on the wall in a mediation and just soaking in information about, this area that you're interested in learning more about. There's tons of conferences out there, whether they're really designed for you as a mediator or not. I mean, we talked about getting your mediation education, but getting your education in specific areas, a good way to do that is by attending conferences. And a lot of them are, they do charge money for like continuing legal education. But if the advanced family law course in San Antonio is so huge, if you just snuck in, no one would ever know. There's like 4,000 people there. And it really is helpful just to soak in information and familiarize yourself with the conflicts and the issues that would come up in your mediations. And it's also helpful just to be visible at places like that, because you're selling yourself, right? If someone, what are you doing here? Well, I'm a mediator. I'm trying to learn this information. And all of a sudden you're visible in these circles where your potential clients could be. So, and shadowing other mediators and getting, being involved in groups like the Austin Association of Mediators and TAM is really helpful, because, you're building a support network for yourself, but those are also sources of referrals as you get better and better, as you become more well-versed and become a better mediator over time. And, it is really like anything. If you play the guitar, well, the first day you're going to stink, but over time you're going to become well versed, and you will be a good guitarist. If you're a runner, the first time you run, you'll run like a block and be completely out of breath. If you start doing that over and over, hey, I just ran a marathon. It's just keeping your focus, keeping your attention, and just time is going to help in getting better with anything. Oh, I just started the video again. Let's try that again. Back to my theme that you are going to hear multiple times today. It's there's never just going to be the right time. Jump in with 2 feet. I think once you kind of have a little bit of background, the way you get better is by learning, and the way you get better is by doing it. And I would really, encourage all of you to the topic of the talk is building a successful mediation practice. To me, the way you become a better mediator is by mediating. I want to talk about some tools of the trade very quickly. The interesting thing, we were talking about this before the main meeting got started. For years, I had a really nice meeting facility. I think another mediator and I shared 8 offices. All of them had conference room, giant conference tables, really nice, expensive conference tables with leather chairs. And Michelle had her office, I had my office, but we had a really nice area to facilitate mediations in. And after COVID, that office sat empty for like 2 years. And just recently, Michelle and I closed down the office. I do not have an office anymore. This is my office. Zoom is my office. And what that does for mediators and really for a lot of people is it really takes a lot of a big barrier to entry in this area out of the way, because instead of having thousands of dollars every month in this really fancy schmancy conference area where you have rooms where people can be together and breakout rooms and everything else that you need a computer with Zoom on it. And so it really is a good time to get to move your practice forward, because the ability to facilitate mediations just got a lot less expensive as long as you have a good Zoom. As long as you have a good Zoom signal. And I recommend getting a good computer. I like laptops because if you do mediate in person, you can just fold it up and take it with you. They also typically would have a camera. We have a camera right now. So check that box. I do have a second monitor. Actually, as nerdy as I've got 4 monitors here, but I really like the idea of a second monitor right above your laptop. And because the camera on most laptops is kind of in the center, I've been looking off at y'all's faces, by the way, but the camera's right front and center. And if you look up, it's harder for people who are with you to tell that you're looking up, looking at a second monitor. So you can have your Zoom meeting directly in front. And if you have ancillary stuff or you want to share the screen, you can have that up top. And even as you're scrambling to look at stuff, no one would ever know because you really are looking straight ahead. So rather than putting to the side, which is a lot more obvious when you're looking to the side, if it's right above, it allows you to get presentations, get information up a little easier. If you do go out and do in-person mediations, a portable printer, assuming you don't have a fixed office, a portable printer is a necessity. Printers are super inexpensive right now and have been for years. It's pretty easy to do that. One thing that I always mention, and I don't know that a lot of people use this, but I rely on this pretty heavily, is that like a columnar pad, accounting, columnar pad, like what you see. And I fold that in half, and after as we go along, it really is a good way for me to keep track of the offers. Now, there are a lot of mediators where you're mediating one issue, right? What dollar figure is the insurance company going to pay for the case to go away? And maybe you're less reliant on a pad like this if there's a one issue case. In family law, there's lots of issues, and it's a good way if you put Bill and Sally at the top of the columns, and then Bill and then Sally, then Bill and Sally. You can sort of keep track of the tennis match, and when something gets agreed to and gets knocked out, you mark it that way, and just keep working on those other issues. But to me, it's kind of essential. A lot of attorneys sometimes lose track of their own offer, and a lot of parties lose track of their own offer. You as the mediator look very much in control. If someone says, what was it that I offered last round? And you can answer that immediately just by looking down at your pad to keep track of the back and forth. Our area is all about confidentiality. A good shredder is essential. So get a good shredder, because you are going to be shredding all of this stuff at the end of the mediation, and of course, Zoom. Let's see, other tools of the trade. A book that recites that talks about the standards that apply in whatever area you are working in. Remember, getting to yes, one of the prongs of getting to yes is insist on using objective criteria. Having an idea about how the law applies, how the rules apply, is helpful. For in family law, it's the family code. It might be daunting when you first open it up, but a lot of times in those mediations, especially if there's attorneys involved, they reference sections of the family, sections of the family code. It's helpful to have a family code and have some familiarity with that. And that's not unique to family law. If there's other areas of the law, it is helpful to kind of know a little bit about the issues. And again, the acronyms and terminology is always helpful. And I do kind of keep a cheat sheet in a program called Microsoft OneNote. I'll talk a little bit about that later. What Microsoft OneNote is kind of like this digital filing cabinet. And I really do rely on that to keep, common terms, terminology. If there's a word or phrase I don't know, or something that's used in context, I have that available to type in, hey, Mark, look into this later. If there's an idea or something that's referenced, I have a quick way of sort of pocketing that and being able to come back to it later. And I'll talk about OneNote in just a moment. Be brave. Just do it. It's intimidating to get your practice off the ground, but if you use your time to accomplish that, if you use your energy to go out there and market yourself and be visible at things and let people know that you're, what you're doing as a mediator, and honestly, getting the world to think of you as a mediator, that's not always the easiest thing. And I am a big proponent. If you talk to me for any level of time, you're going to know pretty quickly that I'm a mediator, and I'm proud of it. And I really do see a tremendous amount of value in what we do. Our area of practice is helpful societally. It's helpful for the world. And talk up this area amongst your friends. There shouldn't be any secret by anybody who about what you do. And we mentioned joining mediation organizations and being seen in those circles, but constantly market yourself, constantly be proud and be passionate about this area that we do love. And if you talk to Linda for 10 minutes, Linda is going to, you will know that Linda has an association with mediation and she loves this area. And most of you probably fall in that same category. Don't be afraid to talk about what you're passionate about. And even in mediation, it is completely fair to, let the parties know. I know you're in this conflict. I know you're in this suit or whatever, but mediation really is a good way to go. Sorry, my ringer should be off. I'm a little embarrassed that I didn't fix that. Your client's seen that you are a huge proponent of this area, and that your expectation is that they're going to work together and work it out and maintain the relationship, and that is a priority. It should be a priority from them, is something helpful and for them to hear throughout the day and for you to talk about throughout the day. Again, back to our main theme, you're never going to have every box checked to start mediating or start charging for your mediations. You just have to be bold and do it. Okay, so how do we do that? Mark, you talk a great talk, but how in the world do you do that? Well, getting mediations under your belt is a good way to do it. At the DRC, the person who I modeled my mediation practice after was a retired corporate executive. He was not an attorney. He was just looking for something to do in his retirement. And I got to hand it to the gentleman's name is Bob Bowman. If any of you ever knew Bob, he would go to the courthouse, and he had a copy of the family code and knew it. He would sit in the back row and watch cases at the courthouse and learn about family law and learn the issues and learn the terminology. And over time, he would tell the judge, hey, I'm available to facilitate free mediations. And the judge, before the docket call, would say, hey, while you're waiting, we've got Bob Bowman here who is available for free mediation. He'll facilitate your mediation for free. And people started to use Bob just in the hallway and in a room. And Bob would successfully mediate the case. And all of a sudden, Bob was being hired by folks, and that's how he got his foot in the door, is just by mediating, resolving cases, being good at it, and getting people to think of him in a positive way in terms of resolving cases. The other thing that Bob did that I did when I started out, I was a cheap date. You're not going to walk into mediation and start charging crazy money. You have to kind of, cut your teeth and get some mediations under your belt and sort of get the reputation that you're, worth the effort. But starting out kind of low cost gives folks an incentive to start using you. And once your calendar starts filling up and you start getting more and more of a reputation, then you can start inching up what you charge. But I know my strategy when I started was to undercut the competition, and that worked. I was able to get business pretty quickly because I was a cheap date initially. In mediation, again, diving into what we do every day, I think your introduction is key. And I really do think that, just you shining through and your personal story. Back to Bob, his introduction, he talked about his own divorce, and he said he didn't handle his own divorce very well. And if he could go back in time and redo it, he would use some of the mediation principles, and he would certainly go through mediation. He would do more to maintain that relationship. It was a very personal and impactful story for parties to hear, and I think extremely effective. The other thing is mind mapping your introduction. I'm not a good proponent of this because I have my introduction, and I kind of have this cookie cutter arrangement that I talk about. If you mind map it and you sort of say, I know I need to cover these 5 areas, but how I cover them is going to may differ case to case, I think is a much better way to go. The guy who I really admire for doing this is Willie Kasurik. If any of you ever knew Willie Kasurik, Willie Kasurik was this, I think he's still the oldest graduate of the University of Texas School of Law. And he was in his 70s when he graduated from UT. But he, was a businessman in Austin for years. He was a lawyer, but he was also in high demand as a speaker. And Willie showed me his sheet that he had, and it was mind mapping. It was this sort of central idea, and it went off in different directions. He was mind mapping before people mind mapped. But he had this one page, and if he was talking in the Rotary Club, well, he'd go off in this tangent. He'd make sure he covered these things, but it had a lot of flexibility, and it kept him on track. But he could talk to the Rotary Club in the morning and go talk to the Boy Scouts in the evening, and then talk to a trade group at night, and use that same one sheet. But it would go in different directions, but he had it down and was very ready to adapt it to whoever he was talking about. And as you know, it's a really good opportunity at the very beginning to emphasize your neutrality, your confidentiality, and goals of mediation. I think the most important part of your mediation is the introduction. The other thing, back to the cat video, is no Zoom. If you're facilitating a mediation, make sure you don't fumble it and I guess I did with my video since there was no audio, but nonetheless, you know, the other thing is in your introduction, explain Zoom. You know, there's a varying degree of people's knowledge about Zoom. Some people, you know, have used Zoom lots of times, but never have used the breakout room feature. I like to explain, you know, even to people who say, "Oh, I know how the breakout room feature works," explain how I'm going to use it. You know, that it may be at some point we go into a breakout room. They can't hear you, you can't hear them. I'm saying this a little quicker than I would in my mediation. And then when I'm in the room, you know, when you see my face on the screen, I'm in the room with you. I can see and hear everything. If my face drops off the screen, I'm no longer in the room. And I kind of make it a joke. I do say Zoom doesn't let me really announce ahead of time that I'm coming in. I just poof, show up. So I start talking and moving around. If I come into a breakout room, don't be freaked out about that. Don't be surprised. That's just me, you know, making sure you know that I'm around. But I do want to make sure people have a comfort level with confidentiality, despite the fact that we're doing this, you know, electronically or via Zoom. And there's a lot of people, by the way, that I'll mediate with that have never used Zoom or just don't have used it. They saw their kid use it or something. They just don't have a familiarity. And the other thing is a plan B with technology. And again, I think I used to have a better plan B when I had my office, because if God forbid the internet went out, I could beeline to the office and just pick it up there. And I actually had to do that one time. Now I probably need to do a better job, maybe getting a second internet provider so that if Spectrum goes out, I can lean on AT&T. But it's just, you know, thinking about those things ahead just makes you more spit and polished. And I just got rid of the office, so that's probably something I need to practice in my own arrangement. Microsoft OneNote. There's other programs out there that are really good, like OneNote, that are ways to organize your thoughts and ways to organize your data. But I keep this open during every mediation. And like I said, with the 2-monitor system, OneNote is on the top section, and it really is a way to access information quickly. Again, my area is family law, but issues come up sometimes where people will say, "I wonder what the house is. I wonder what, you know, Zillow says the house is." And if you can, you know, I'm able to access that quickly because I have a link that's just in a tab under valuation for real estate. There's, you know, the Zillow and the Trulia and Realtor.com. You know, again, back to you know, you verify in the in getting to yes, tax appraisal. You have a quick way to do that. A lot of times in family law, we're talking about residency restrictions. I have lots of links to maps where you can draw a circle around a specific address, where you can just look at Google Maps, figure out what's halfway. There's a lot of options out there, and it's smart to have those kind of bookmarks so you can access them quickly. Not a surprise. Child support calculations. There are times when I'm asked to calculate child support, or the question comes up and I beat everybody. You know, if there's 3 people in the room calculating child support, I might be the first one done just because I got the link quicker. School districts, you know, again, in my area, my apologies to all of you who are not family, who don't practice in the area of family law. You know, a lot of custody arrangements sort of revolve around the school calendars, and it's nice to give people an example of dates when the Round Rock Independent School District leaves for Christmas versus the Austin Independent School District. A lot of times there are issues that come up in cases: parenting classes, anger management classes, drug and alcohol testing. Having links to those, being able to show people that pretty quickly is helpful. Same thing with vehicle values, same thing with calendars, you know, even having a way to illustrate first, third, and fifth weekends to somebody who doesn't know that. You know, if you have a quick link, you just look really spit and polish when you pull that up in no time. Just having that filing cabinet, that OneNote filing cabinet, is helpful. Rules for unaccompanied minors. Sometimes that comes up. Well, I've got a 3-year-old. How's that going to work? How's it work when she's 7? What airline do you fly? Let's look up Southwest's policy there, and you just look spit and polish.
Mark,
I mentioned, yeah.
We had a question in the chat. Maybe you're going to cover this about like marketing and maybe what apps are best for leads for marketing, and also like how to handle a call from a new mediation party that has not discussed choosing a mediator with the other side. So that was one question we got.
Well, when you're fielding, let's start with the second one first. So if somebody calls you, I do think it's fair, I think you are smart to have a website and a web presence that's out there for the world to see. I will tell you, I'm got involved in mediation a long time ago. My website is austinmediation.com. And so usually if if someone says, oh, I need to find a mediator in Austin, I come up because I just have a good website. So it is, finding a good website is a good way. I don't know, going to the first question, I have a lot of links from other sources to bring people. I don't really advertise. I don't do, Google keywords, and, I don't pay for advertising for people to find my website. But I think it was sort of helpful early on to get a good website where people just chance upon me. To the second question about fielding those questions, I do, if somebody calls me, I encourage people to look at my website. I think it does help once you establish yourself and you mediate a lot. You do have a positive, your reputation in the community. I will tell you, I do have a mediation calendar on my website, and it's, I think people oftentimes see that I'm busy, and that adds some legitimacy to me being a mediator. That doesn't really help for being a new mediator. And I am going to talk about kind of that sort of online presence in a minute. But I wish I could give you a better answer about, there are ways to advertise through Google searches and that kind of stuff. I don't do any of that.
And like bookmediation.com was one specific question. Do you have any knowledge about, is that recommended or anything else like that?
Yeah, bookmediation.com. I know the person who runs it. I think they charge you $50 a month. It does solve the booking, the calendaring issue. But I've never. I think when it first started off, I was on it without paying for it. But a lot of people use it. A lot of mediators do find that helpful. I don't necessarily, I don't use it. But because one of the problems with bookmediation.com is you're in this pool with a bunch of other mediators, and you can put your rates on there so people can see, oh, okay, I think I might go with this person because their rate might work better, or whatnot. I just have never used it. One thing I will tell you though, about that is when I started off, I had a sliding scale. And by the way, 20 years later, I still have a sliding scale. And I remember I instituted my sliding scale, and a very prominent attorney, I was speaking to her, and she said, I'm never going to use you because you have a sliding scale. That's just not fair. And the blood just ran from my face. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've screwed up with the sliding scale. No one's going to hire me. I really dropped the ball, and I was panicked. But guess what? There are plenty of people out there who appreciate and who like the sliding scale. And by the way, to her credit, this attorney has never used me. So she was, but that hasn't really resulted in an impact on my business because I stay pretty busy. Back to the question, there are ways to get out there and to advertise and to market. Mediate.com has a way to join that, and they kind of have a referral service, or people can find you through mediate.com. Same thing with book mediation. For me, it's just getting out there and it being one of the names that are tossed around when people are thinking about a mediator. And the only way to be on that list is to mediate. And if you're new and people don't know who you are, just do it. Just start mediating, whether you're doing it for free or whether, as a volunteer, you're doing it for low cost. Your reputation is going to be what gets you continued business in this area, at least in my area. There are other areas out there where they do have kind of, rotating lists. The courts sometimes maintain rotating lists of mediators. They may have specific criteria to get on that list. Some do, some don't. Post office mediations, you just have to meet the qualifications to be on that list. But there's, depending on what kind of area you operate in, there's ways to just get on lists, and sooner or later your name comes up, and you know, you probably won't do the best job the first time you do that type of mediation, your initial time. I know I probably didn't the first mediation that I had, but you get better over time, and after a while you really do have a comfort level, and you know, can do it. I hope that answered that question. Probably took me too long to answer that question.
We had another question about, must I establish an LLC to mediate, or just do it as a sole proprietor?
I think if you're starting out, you know, I don't know that I would immediately run out and start out an LLC, you know, or a PLLC. Once you start, you know, getting involved in you know, more complex cases, it may not be such a bad idea. And there's differing of opinions. There's a lot of people that just do it as a sole practitioner. There's a lot of people that have a corporate structure. I do think you know, mediator insurance is sort of not very expensive. You know, I have mediator insurance through the Association of Attorney Mediators. Just being in that group, you automatically have mediation insurance, but getting it privately is not terribly expensive. To me, that might be a better starting place than you know, immediately running out and setting yourself up as an LLC or a PLLC.
Okay. And then we had one more question. Sorry, Mark. Just want to get all
please ask them. Please ask them.
Okay. Let's see. Mimi is commenting that someone told her that it's better not to specialize in. I've been told that it's better to choose an area that I'm not a subject matter expert due to neutrality concerns. But what I'm hearing you say is that you would focus on the areas that you are more of an expert.
Well, I'm just saying your learning curve is shorter if you know the issues, you know the acronyms, you know kind of the things that are out there. I certainly wouldn't tell anybody to limit themselves, and I don't either. You know, I do mediate personal injury lawsuits, administrative lawsuits, probate matters. I've never practiced in any of those areas. But if you're starting out, you know, either I think there's wisdom in picking an area that you already know, or picking an area that you're going to get, you know, educated in. And the nice thing about family law is there's not a lack of information out there about those issues. You can Google Texas divorce, and there's all kinds of, you know, there's all kinds of information out there that if you kind of look through it for a while, you start to recognize the moving parts: possession schedules, child support, property division. But in probate, it's a totally different, you know, area. I do think that there is wisdom in our area, back to the getting to yes prong of you know, objective criteria. It does help to have an idea of what the rules are. What, you know, if you're mediating a workplace dispute, you know, having the corporate employee book that talks about, you know, the standards of that company with regards to that issue is helpful to have, and as opposed to going in blind and not knowing that. So, you know, I don't know that I would have started in an area, hey, I know a lot about family law, but forget that, I'm going to dive into the pool and start mediating probate cases. I think it would have been a much harder learning curve for me to have done that.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And then someone asked about, is there any organization that provides like mediation forms for people to use, like the typical forms?
Good question. Linda, you might be in a better position to answer this. I know Tam had that for a while.
Yes, Tam still has it. And the other thing that I was putting in the chat, and I'll take out now, is that if you are a member of TAM, you can also get the mediator insurance. It's not included in the dues for TAM members as it is in the Association of Attorney Mediators, but also TAM dues are much, much lower than those for Association of Attorney Mediators.
And not to plug my organization, TAM, but I'm going to plug my organization, TAM. You know, no offense to those, sorry attorneys out there, but those groups are stuffy. They're kind of, kind of high on themselves, and they're kind of like to see themselves as this sort of elite group. I like TAM, and I like the Austin Association of Mediators because they're just good people trying to go out there and make the world a better place. And they're less, they're kind of I'm not to knock my own profession, but they're, I would much prefer to hang out with Linda and people like us who are just out there, working hard to try to when you hang out in TAM, you talk about mediation. If you hang out in some of those other attorney groups, it's a different type of conversation. I'm a TAM kind of person, which probably explains some of my involvement in that group. There are lots of groups out there to think of, but and to think about, not to, and I'm a member of a lot of them, but TAM's where my heart is. And they have forms and they have insurance. I didn't know about the insurance, by the way, Linda. Thanks for letting me know that.
Well, we've had it ever since I was president. That was a long time ago.
Any other questions, or we could still move on? I know we're close to the end here.
I think we're good for now. Oh, we just got a question. When should payment occur in setting up a mediation? Is a non-refundable deposit a good idea? $100, $200? What is a successful way for the parties to commit to doing the mediation and then to ensure payment sooner than the day of mediation? And do you use an escrow account?
I will tell you, I'm probably more liberal than other people. I usually collect my fee at the end of the mediation. I do use, for the longest time, when COVID hit, I just took my little credit card machine home and I would just punch in the credit card machine, and that transitioned into LawPay. So I use LawPay now. I collect at the end of the mediation, and there's an exception to that. If there's pro se parties, I collect at the beginning, because a lot of times, and I'll have that conversation. Now, you're aware, Joe, that I do charge for my services, and I do have a sliding scale, and I want to make sure you're aware of that. And let's go ahead and just take care of that cost part now. If there's an attorney involved, even if the person, I just forgot my credit card or whatever, the attorney usually will step up and say, you know what, I'll pay Mr. Sims, and we can, just take that out of your retainer. I'm less of a, I don't set up escrow accounts. That's just way more formal than I like to be. And I told you, I'm kind of a one-person shop, so it's just work to have to set all that up and collect it up front, and then refund people or charge them more if the mediation ends early or goes late. To me, it's just much simpler to say, hey, and by the way, my hope is, hey, we settled your case, and they're just ecstatic to pay you. And I always say, here, the hardest part of the day, paying Sims. But the reality is, after the marathon that they've gone through, paying me is probably pretty easy. And it's really easy if you basically created and help them create a path to get them closure on a difficult, ugly situation.
Thank you. I think we're ready to move on now.
Just a few things about technology. I am by no means any kind of techno nerd, but that being said, a lot of things that have evolved in my practice just kind of started out in necessity, and all of a sudden have become pretty complex. We talked about a calendar. I have an online calendar. It is not a real-time calendar. So, if somebody books a mediation in the middle of the day, it's not like the calendar is automatically updated. I update that every night, and you do have to, doing it that way, have to send an embarrassing email every now and then, hey, somebody beat you to the spot. But so I can't mediate that at the time you request it. I do have easy scheduling. Again, this is not for everybody, and it might be an evolution for folks, but I have a form that you fill out online that for the parties, information about the case. It's not a very complex form, but it does help me make sure that I've got names spelled right, that I have emails taken care of. Believe it or not, when other people are putting in the information, it's less likely that there'll be an error. If they type in the mediation date, you're not going to screw that up by rewriting it, or if it's automatic, it really does minimize a lot of mistakes that you might make when you're sending out confirmations at 10 p.m. after a long day. I do like to send out confirmations, and I update my calendar every night. One thing I would encourage everybody here to do is, especially kind of at the beginning, and I appreciate the form question, have your form ready, have your template ready, especially with sort of common, scenarios. If you're mediating a personal injury case, just having a mediated settlement agreement with all the, disclaimers and how it's going to be paid, just having sort of predefined language that you can shave off what's not relevant and keep what is, versus just starting from scratch, you really do appear a lot more spit and polish. Of course, anybody who mediates via Zoom, you have to have some way of getting the document signed. I use HelloSign just because it's sort of dummy proof on my end, right? But clients, even not very sophisticated people, are able to figure it out. So I'm a proponent of HelloSign, but there's Adobe Sign, there's a bunch of options out there. I mentioned OneNote. I really like OneNote because of the ease, the organization ease. It's just easy for me to find stuff. I mentioned the graph paper. I mentioned, having anticipated language prepared, but even for emails, commonly sent emails, there's a way in Outlook, the email service Outlook, to have just pre-formatted emails. And so emails that I send, hey, there's a conflict, someone beat, I don't rewrite that every time. I have a template that I go to, and I fill in names and send that off. If I'm putting together a mediator proposal because we ran out of time or something like that, I have pre-formulated emails, just templates that I've set up in Outlook just to send that out. Macros, again, a little more sophisticated, but Outlook and Word have the ability to program macros to do common tasks. A real common task in Word is to save the file and close it. And I've created a macro that's just always on my header. Punch one button, it saves the file and close it. Now I've got a lot more sophisticated macros in there, but it started with pretty basic stuff, and you just kind of learn and evolve. And I do really encourage all of you this is pretty common with attorneys, and a lot of times required by malpractice carriers, is to keep multiple calendars, and sort of make sure they match. And that really does eliminate misscheduling, double scheduling. If you have dual calendars, it really does kind of avoid errors. The other thing in mediation, and again, I know I'm kind of all over the map for building a successful mediation practice, but it's essential that you are interested, and that you let the parties know you are interested, and that this isn't just a cookie cutter next case kind of thing. You really are interested in their circumstances, and listen. And that's hard to do when you're looking at your watch and, oh my gosh, I've got a limited amount of time to work through this very complex issue. But a key part, I think, in any mediation is for the parties to be heard, and letting them know that you're interested, and then listening. But also, you can learn a lot just by paying attention to what people are saying. And even if you have a case where there's parties and attorneys, no offense to attorneys, they like to talk. And, I do, let the attorney do their thing. And, a lot of times it is helpful for an attorney to sort of summarize the moving parts, but I always make it a point to, okay, thank you, attorney. Let's talk to the party. And if you're doing a joint session, man, it's really helpful for each of the parties to hear from each other sometimes. Now, attorneys play games to try to block that, and it just is what it is. But I always try to, where I can, make that a part of it, even if it's just me listening to what they have to say. A lot of people in these very difficult situations, giving them an outlet to be heard is sometimes a key part of getting a case worked out. You all know that from your mediation training, but always a good reminder. The other thing is just to be culturally sensitive. We live in a society where there's a lot of different cultures, a lot of religions, a lot of sexual orientation issues that do come up in my area of family law, and be knowledgeable about that kind of stuff, and be open and being able to speak intelligently about, religious and cultural holidays that aren't necessarily your religious or cultural holidays. It's worth every bit of effort and energy to just be well versed in general about other cultures, about other religions, about sexual orientation, because those issues are very relevant and do come up in my area of family law. And having a knowing a little bit about when someone mentions that there's going to be there might be a problem with regards to Passover and who's getting custody at Passover. It's helpful that you know what Passover is if you're not Jewish, and Diwali, and there's sometimes property issues come up with dowries. You might want to educate yourself a little bit about that, so that when that comes up in your case, some knowledge. And arranged marriages, there are a lot of different things that are not the norm for your circumstances, the way you grew up, but are real world issues out there. And the more sensitive and the more open you are to knowing about that, learning about it, speaking intelligently about it, the better. Okay, so even before we started this, you have everything that you need. Again, it's just a matter of getting up and doing it. And I love this quote from Mindy Kaling. Just put your lip gloss on and go for it. And one other thing I want to mention for me, when you're stuck, because you are going to be stuck, and we've all been there, and you're sitting there going, I don't know what to do. Okay, person A said this, person B has said that. Where do I go from here? I will tell you a really good secret. On mediate.com, I put the link here, and it's recorded so you can find this. There's a link to 4 articles that it's just dozens of questions. And I have found that so helpful, because in a mediation where I'm just stuck, I'll separate myself from the mediation. I'll just step out and and I always set up, and when you're setting up breakout rooms, I always set up a marked breakout room. So I go to my own little breakout room and pull up that list. And more times than not, after about 60 seconds, I will, that's a great question that's going to move things along. And by the way, once you start doing this for a while, those questions sort of pop in your head without having to reference the list, so you become a better mediator. It really is a helpful resource. I would encourage you to have that at the ready. By the way, my list is in OneNote, so it's really easy for me to, hey, let me just step out for a second, go to OneNote, pull up that list, and spend 60 seconds and say, hey, this is a great question to ask to open things up, to move things along. So I encourage you, if you ever get stuck like me, and you will, that's a good resource. And just know you're going to screw it up. You will. I'm more times than I care to acknowledge. But you brush yourself off. You learn from those. You think about your mistakes, and you think about how I can avoid that next time. And that really is part of your education and being a better mediator. And asking about it. Hey, Linda, I had this situation come up in my, and I didn't know, how would you have handled that? We are resources for each other. It is good to rely on your friends and talk through. Okay, that's over with now, but how am I going to deal with that issue when it comes up in the future? And that's it. I know we've covered, I've spent a lot of time chatting and not that much time answering questions. Does anybody, and I hope this was okay. I know I've been all over the map, and that's kind of how my brain works, so my apologies for that. Any questions from any of you about getting started, about anything that I've mentioned?
Mark, before anyone asks questions, can you send the link to the Zoom court maybe to Linda or Lori that we can send out to everybody?
I would be delighted to. Now, a couple things. Going back to that cat video, the cat video, one of the 4 squares says, if you record this, bad things can happen, and yet I did. And I figured it was kind of worth the risk because it's just that funny. You know, if I spend a few days in jail for a little bit of entertainment, I guess I can handle it. But outside of that, yes, I know I might have to remove that cat video before I send it out, just so I don't have to do time. But I'll figure out a way to insert the link in there. So yeah, I just don't want the feds to come after me. But yes, I'd be delighted to. And the other thing, I'm going to have to figure out to do it because I'm using Google Slides today as opposed to a PowerPoint. There's a way to do it. I'll figure it out and get that to Linda.
I'm sorry to interrupt right now, but I know that the class is going to go back into session soon. I had a question. If you are an attorney and you're not a member of Austin Mediators, but have attended this session because Michelle and Clay invited you to do so, we'd ask each of you that want to have MCLE credit to give Clay the $5 we charge our members for MCLE credit, and make sure that he has your bar number. And that's great. Sorry, go right ahead.
And join Austin Mediators and join TAM. And there's a lot of other groups out there that are good, and you'll decide which ones you like and which ones you feel comfortable with and which ones you aren't that so comfortable with. And you know, you'll find your path. But being a part of these groups is extremely helpful. And I've learned lots and lots of information being in the spot that you're in right now, just soaking up information. And boy, Mark threw out 20 things that just don't make sense to me, but here's 2 that do. The 2 make it worth it. Any other questions? Well, listen, you guys have been fantastic. I'm easy to find. If anybody wants to chat with me, by all means, I'm open to calls. I am pretty busy during the day, so sometimes email is a good way to reach me as well. But it was a pleasure being a part of this talk today, and thank you so much for your time and attention. And as I said earlier, for your passion for this area. It really is meaningful to me that all of you use your precious time in this way. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Mark, it was great. Thank you very much for doing this.